Hey, brother, hear me now. Brother, dog. Know me, understand.
Welcome to the Sargassum Podcast. My name's Robbie Thigpen.
I'm Francisca Elmer.
And I am Mar Fernandez, and we are your hosts for today. We're gonna share with you the latest ideas and solutions about sargassum, which has become an international challenge.
Hi everyone, how's everybody doing this week?
Hi Fran, everything fine here. Lots of snow finally in northern Germany. Last week it was really snowy in Spain, which was kind of weird, but now it's finally come to Germany where it should be.
Yes.
Well, me, I've just been doing regular old stuff, same old, writing books in indigenous languages and stuff like that. La historia de mi vida.
Yes, and I actually went from Switzerland to Mexico, so now I'm not in the snow anymore, but I get to go to the beach almost every day and see some sargassum.
True, and now that you talk about Mexico, we just handed in this proposal for collaboration with Mexico to work on sargassum carbon cycling. So let's hope that gets funded.
Nice.
Yes. So our guest today is Xavier Diaz from Curaçao. He's a marine biology master student at University of Groningen in Holland, and he's researching the importance of healthy fish nursery habitats in Curaçao. He's also a board member and research coordinator at the Stichting Unique Curaçao, which is a volunteer community group that works towards heightening the life quality of the local residents. As part of this, they help with sargassum removal. Bonbini ano podcast, Javier.
Masha danki, Francisca.
My first question to you, which we ask everybody, is what is sargassum to you?
So, different aspects for me. Like from a scientific point of view, I find sargassum very interesting because sargassum by itself in the ocean doesn't pose a direct threat for the coastline because it helps pelagic fish seek shelter as they go through their life cycle. So, in itself, you can see it as a nursery on the open water. It only becomes a problem when it reaches the coastline. It affects mostly the oceanic areas of the island. And then for me, growing up, I haven't experienced sargassum blooms as severe as we have been experiencing since 2014. That's where it really has been picking up. However, sargassum bloom events have occurred over the years because when you talk with fishermen on the north coast, because the north coast of Curacao is the area that mostly get affected. It mostly has to do with the positioning of the island, with the east coast of the Curacao being more south, with the west coast, the west point of Curacao being higher. So then, because of the tilting of the island, the north coast gets affected. And you hear these fishermen that these sargassum blooms have occurred throughout history already, but they've been recorded now to be more severely than they were in the past because they fill up bays, cause problems for turtles. So because it affects us in such a way, and tourism is the main thing for Curacao, aside from the oil refinery, but that's a whole different story that we won't go into.
But there's always a leak, isn't there?
Yeah. But it's very important for us to maintain the natural areas that we have in Curacao, and sargassum being compacted in our bays, as you can see on my background image, is can be a problem in Curacao. So for me, it's very important, both biologically, but also from a social aspect.
Okay, and now that you're talking about the social aspect, you have been with Stichting Unique Curaçao for over 13 years. And can you tell us a little bit about the organization and what type of opportunities does the organization offer for young people?
Yes. So Stichting Unique Curaçao, as mentioned before, we always look towards the local people. But for us, it's important to connect local people with the nature that we have on Curacao, because we truly believe that if more people go out and enjoy the outdoors, they'll get a better appreciation of our environment. And in that way, they also take care of it a lot better, which pertains to, of course, littering and polluting. of our environment. So then they become more aware of their carbon footprint that they're leaving behind. So Unique Curacao, I started out in 2007 in summer. I remember being in high school, and a buddy of mine, he was part of Stick Unique Curacao. And if he first started by asking me if I was interested in joining him on one of these intern Jeep tours, which they take interns up and then show them the island. And from there on, I learned more about different aspects of the island, because I didn't know much about the cave systems or the history, or knew a lot of history, but then specific history for each site. That was very interesting. And then from then on, I volunteered as a park ranger, where I would go out in the field and I make maps, I take GPS coordinates, and we make new products for people to be able to enjoy. We make hiking trails, but even sometimes assist other groups of people in the woods. But the opportunities that it would provide for the youth, actually, because what I've been there since I was in high school still, so I learned to network, because you get to know a lot of people, but at the same time I learned to value the island, learned to love the island that I grew up on. And I encourage anybody to do volunteer work, not just for Stichting Unique Curacao, but for any NGOs that we have on the island that can help support the community. Because at the end of the day, we do volunteer work because we love our island and the topic that they work on. Because it's not only the nature, but we also have NGOs that work on social aspects.
Well, let me get off the script just a little bit, and let me ask you something. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with your uncles and the things that you learned from them about these ecosystems that Curacao is right in the middle of.
Okay, so I grew up very close to well, it's an island, but I grew up very close to the water. So I've always been involved in going on a boat, go fishing, snorkeling. Which is the reason why I became a marine biologist, because I just enjoyed loving the ocean. But I say uncles, but not all of them are uncles. It's just a way in the island that we express respect for an older person. So then I had uncles that would be fishermen on the North Coast, and you'll hear stories from them, how they would go out and they would follow birds to reach groups of tunas, or in the bays, they know exactly where they need to find these conchs. So they have to go look on seagrass beds, or they know where snappers are residing in the bays or on the reef. So growing up, these things I learned later on in my bachelor's, was a lot of them were repetition. They were more scientifically based, but they were still based on knowledge that I've already previously learned from my uncles, which is very interesting, because they themselves, they're not scientists, but then they just learned from over years and years of practice from generations before that they learned. And it's very interesting to see it from that way, because it truly shows that you can value both knowledge at the same time. It's a very cool relationship that I had with my family.
Yes, yeah. So you were steeped in this tradition of this non-ecological knowledge system that you received, and has been passed down for time immemorial, I guess, and it sounds like it's had a pretty big impact on your life. And are you finding now that you've studied biology and and you're in your master's, is it become easier or more difficult to communicate with these men of your community that you hold in high esteem?
For me, it's easy, because I grew up around them, so I know exactly how I have to talk. A lot of times, local people, especially fishermen, they don't like when you come in and you act like the boss, like you know everything. So by already knowing how they are, how they react, it was a lot easier for me to approach them, especially with the project that I've done last year when I was in Curacao, where I had to talk with fishermen so I could collect fish samples. Like, you just have to acknowledge that they also know what they're talking about, that you just don't tell them, oh, this is how it's going to be. You just have to be respectful when you approach them and talk. So I can definitely say that before going in my master's, before going even in my bachelor's, I already knew how I had to communicate with the locals.
Nice. Let me follow up on that a little bit. What's your first language?
My first language, it's kind of hard to say. I would say 2 languages. It's Dutch and Pavimento. My writing in Pavimento is not as good, because as I started school, Dutch was more of the primary language. So, starting out, I started out in Dutch, and then when I got to high school, that's when Pavimento started to get more into play. And then by the end of my high school years, Papiamento became an official language. So then I still have a lot of gaps in my Papiamento literature, but I would say Dutch and Papiamento, but with all my siblings, I speak English. So it's
it just depends on the situation.
It really depends on the situation.
Well, how about these men you hold in high esteem? What language do they generally use?
Papiamento.
Okay, so would you say that the language of the fishery in Curaçao is Papiamento?
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And well, that's awesome. That's really neat stuff you just shared. But thank you very much for that. Who's next?
I have a question for language as well. So, which languages does Stichting Unique Curaçao use to talk to people and do their outreach and give away information?
So currently we have a Facebook page that we use. It's mostly we send information in Dutch with its let's say we're doing our daily tasks, showing the public what we're doing. I believe it's mostly in Dutch. But when we're doing outreach programs, for example, at schools, we actually see what type of language the teachers prefer for us to do the outreach in. Certain schools, you have international schools where only do English, but you also have other smaller schools where they do Papiamento, or other schools that prefer Dutch. So we actually accommodate ourselves to maximize the knowledge that we can bring over to the students by seeing which language they're most comfortable with. It's also
cool.
handy. Yeah, it's handy that most people on the island speak 4 languages, and some even a 5th language if they kept it in high school.
That's so cool. That's awesome.
Can you say what is sargassum for you in Papiamento?
Kikuta sargassum. We also made a video about sargassum actually on YouTube. In Papiamento. We were gonna put subtitles. That's still in the works, but it was mostly in Papiamento because the majority of the population would prefer Papiamento, and we believe that they are the group of people that we have to focus on, because at the end of the day, you want to influence locals. We can do it in English, we can do it in Dutch, but a lot of times people from abroad already know that this is an issue, and we're trying to influence people on our own island. And Papiamento, since that is our official local language, we've made a video in Papiamento to make it easier.
Well, when you share that link to that with us, and we'll put that up with your bio and all that.
Yeah, okay.
And I got a question for Mar and Francisca. Who does this guy sound like you got, DL? Who says these kind of things that he's saying?
I don't know.
I mean, the stuff he says about the ecological knowledge and the science is exactly what you say. It's like a younger version of you, Robbie.
Yeah, he's gonna go places, I believe.
But he speaks 4 languages, and you only speak 1.
I barely speak my mother tongue. but I know how to order a beer in about a dozen languages. And
that is important.
Well, people say, well, you need to learn how to ask to go to the bathroom. No, I can get that with sign language.
Okay. Let's go back to sargassum. So Javier, tell us how is usually sargassum dealt with in Curaçao, and when you help with removing it, how do you do it, and where do you take it, and all that stuff?
So I'm gonna take Asunción as an example. In Curaçao, as I mentioned before, the North Coast gets affected. The main areas that get affected are Sint-Joris Bay, which is situated more on the northeast part of the island. And then you have Asunción, and you have 2 other bays in a private area. It's called Bartel Bay and Boca Grande. And those areas are harder for us to get to. One, it's on private land, but also we work with STCC a lot, as sea turtle conservation. They normally go to that area for sea turtles because that's where the majority of the sea turtles on the North Coast are. So then they would deal in that area whenever they get a chance. But we mostly focus on Asunción and Sint-Joris. But we focus our main attention on Asunción, which is the one that you see in the background here, because Sint-Joris is a bigger bay. So after a while, the sargassum washes away by itself. So there is a type of in-current that eventually moves it all out, or it just sinks to the bottom slowly, moves away because the bay is so big. And but with Ascension, the depth of the bay is not as deep, so then there's less current that can go in and out. So when the sargassum goes in, it compacts itself within. So then it just comes layer and layer on top of each other. That's why you can see the different colors. You can see the yellow color of the sargassum where it's already decomposing over here. And then you have the darker color, which gets dried out by the sun. So after a while, we even had birds, bathing birds that were making nests on top of it. I think they're called the black-necked stilts birds. They were putting their eggs on top of the sargassum, and then they even had their young grow before the sargassum eventually went away. So then
this is sargassum, which is on the water, right?
Yeah. All that you see is water. It's supposed to be water, but it just gets so compacted that it's even too dangerous to walk through because you get stuck. So then when it gets compacted like this, the work becomes harder. Also because we get the government that gets also involved, the GMN, and then they advise against it because of the the fumes that could come out of the sargassum. So but how we normally deal with it is that we organize cleanups. We'll go in, we'll take out sargassum. We've been promoting sargassum. When I was studying in Florida International University, I was part of the Alternative Breaks program. And then we would go out, I brought a group of American students to Curacao, and we started to do, we did a workshop where we showed people, hey, you can convert sargassum into fertilizer if you process it in a specific way. So in that way, we wanted to get more locals involved. So then people would come there, we'll remove the sargassum, we'll pile them up on land, and people can come and pick it up. Of course, once the problem escalates to this scale, then the government needs to get involved. However, sometimes it takes a while to mobilize because there is still not a clear protocol of how and when this needs to be dealt with. And luckily, in March, we'll be getting an intern from the Netherlands that's going to be working on such a protocol that we could present to the government, and that way making them more efficient at excavating the sargassum. Because of course you have to keep in mind, so in the back of this bay you actually have mangroves, and they can't just. And in the most ideal situation, if you are at the back, since the sargassum gets compacted in the back, you have to excavate it from there. However, there's also a lot of plastic. There's a whole plastic soup in the back as well that's being accumulated with tires and plastic bag, everything. And there's a section in the back where you can walk on. You think you're walking on sand, but if you look close, it's just microplastic, and that's it's just pure microplastic. I have a picture that I can send to Robbie later. That you can. I have a picture that I took. It looks like the person standing on sand, and I take a picture closer, and it's just microplastic. Yeah. So as of now, we deal with it as best as we can. Right now the protocol is when it gets bad, that's when they start. In my opinion, they should be starting it from the beginning so that you mitigate it. I do understand that there's certain budget constraints that prevent the government from doing it, which is why it's important for NGOs like Stichting Unie Curaçao, STCC, or other NGOs to get involved, because we can gather local people to do the work. And so if that can be done in that way.
So you don't have any like barriers on the ocean to prevent it from arriving to the...
So in this bay, it's very interesting. So the entrance of the bay, since it's the north coast, is very rough compared to the south coast. And they've tried to put a barrier at the beginning of the bay, and it did not really work. I knew that wasn't going to work. But yeah, sometimes it's better to try something than nothing at all. But because of the constant waves coming in, the sargassum is just spilling over. It didn't even slow it down at all. So then it makes it very difficult for this bay to do. And it's interesting for Ascension. So Ascension, throughout my years in Stichting Unie Curaçao, Ascension has changed a lot. So you can see pictures from 2007 that I've taken. Remember, there used to be an island in the middle of the bay and then deeper canals on the side. But that whole island was made out of trash and tires that I've collected there, and then it collects sand. So then me and my colleagues and I cleaned out the whole island out of all of those trash. But then what that happened, then it's because there's no stable holdfast anymore. Everything eroded away, and then we get what we see now, just a flat bay. So then there's no proper current pushing it out. So in theory, you would think that sargassum could go out by itself if the depth was deep enough to allow two currents, the upper current and undercurrent, to come in.
And when the sargassum piles up like this, do you get dead fish or something like this happening too?
Yes. So we've done a survey, just an informal survey, where we would just take a square area of 1 meters, and then we'll just see what type of organisms we can find in that area and count them. And we would find in these instances in this bay, we would find a lot of dead shrimps. We would find dead mantis shrimps, a lot of Sapunculas, and I don't know what the common name for Sapuncula is. I think acorn worm it was.
So some type of worm, right?
Yeah, it's some type of worm. I just don't know the common
name. Acorn worm is correct.
Yeah, we'll find a lot of those, and mostly that's a sign when it's very bad, because it means that the sargassum has been there long enough where there's no oxygen in the water anymore, and everything there is just dying. We would find actually find the sargasso. I think it's the what is called batfish, or the one that you see having your background right now.
The sargasso fish.
The anglerfish.
The anglerfish. Yeah, we would find that one a lot. We'll also find the sargasso crab, the swimming crab. Yeah, we'll find a lot of that. And sometimes we'll find that sea turtles as well. And that's where SDC also gets involved. And so we're pretty much a cesspool of death.
Well, before we get to, that's a good segue to sea turtles, but I want to ask you a quick question before that area behind you in your background. Historically, was there mangroves there, or has it just always been barren like that?
In the area that you see now, there are some black mangroves over here where my hand's passing by, but on the other side right now it's just a cliff. So it's so I can't call this a bay. That's why it's called boca. Boca literally means mouth, which is an entrance. Yeah. So it doesn't have a big area towards the end like a regular bay, which is the main problem of this boca, because everything just comes in. And everything that comes in eventually, when the volume increases, should be able to go out, because of the depth being so low, just compacts in the back. And the only area that there's proper red mangroves are all the way in the back. So even now, you can see that the red mangroves have been dying over the years because of all the compacting. Of course, they break down into smaller particles and they become silt, and then it becomes mud. But then it cuts the red mangroves off from the water. And they're slowly just dying away.
Yikes. I hate to hear that.
So in April 2019, you guys, together with other organizations, were actually able to rescue some sea turtles in this bay. Can you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, so I wasn't directly involved in it because I was also busy with my own project. But we had rangers from the Stichting Unie Curaçao that participated together with SDC, and I believe CITRO, which is I would say like the Coast Guard / lifeguard of the ocean. So then they do rescues normally, and they helped collect go, because the sargassum, of course, when it's compact like this, it's very hard to maneuver. So then they use these boards to move around, and then you had spotters looking for sea turtles, and they were trying to get the sea turtles out, and then they. Once they saved whatever they could save, they brought it to SDCC. I believe they also were able to use the tanks at the Sea Aquarium on Curaçao to try to rehabilitate them. And once they were rehabilitated, then they were let go again to the safe area on Curaçao, on the north coast, of course, because that's where they were taken.
That's very cool. And if you guys wouldn't be taking away the sargassum, then you wouldn't have seen the sea turtles, and they would have probably died.
I mean, even if we weren't taking them away, there's always people there. And we have signs there that with our numbers, and then they know sea turtle conservation is also pretty big on the island. So people know, oh, we have to let them know that there's sea turtles. And during the week, there's normally a guard posted in that bay. So he always keeps an eye out as well. So luckily, there is, at least in that bay, on that boca, there's always somebody there in a way. So, and a lot of time when the sargassum comes in, we have more monitoring happening. So we know, oh, we got to check it regularly, make sure there's nothing coming in, getting stuck and stuff.
When is the sargassum arriving normally in Curacao? What's the sargassum season?
So normally it would run, it could vary by a month, but it's normally April, March. Yeah. And it gets bad, I think, in, I would say April going to May, and then it just sits like this till July, depending on the currents.
Wow.
Yeah, so it stays there pretty long, and then to the point where it bothers people that live about 10 to 15 kilometers away from that area.
Because of
Like
the
you
smell.
can smell it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that smell is
because-
actually also not very healthy for people. It's not just
No, which is the
bothersome.
reason that at a certain point we're not allowed to do volunteer work over there anymore, because then people can start getting headaches and stuff. Luckily, where it's in the open air, deadly levels would be if we were to put somebody in a room with all of that. But but you could still work in the area since it's open air and there's a lot of wind over there.
Mm.
But it's very unpleasant for people that are not used to it, because when it starts decomposing and you take your hand and you put it in, it just smells like death.
So where do you take all the sargassum that you remove from the beach and that you don't use to do fertilizers or anything else? Is it put on land in some pile somewhere, or is it buried?
So I know there was a person that we were in contact with that had a big plot of land where they want to put it there so they can start processing it into fertilizer. I think that fell through in the water. So now what happened last year, it was just sitting there until it dries up, and then we just throw it out as regular trash. So it gets burned, which is not better, honestly. but
Not for the
yeah, nope. So that's why. I do know that there was a company that was interested in collecting sargassum on Curacao to be able to believe Damen, which is a company in the Netherlands. Don't quote me on this. I think it's Damen, which is they want to convert the sargassum to biogas.
Yes,
But,
I met Damen at the sargassum conference, and they are trying to make a boat to collect sargassum out at sea and make bales and then turn it into biogas and electricity.
Yeah, it's a cool venture. The only issue that I see that it doesn't really solve the issue of that we see in the background here.
Yes, well,
as I said, sargassum on open water, it's not a problem normally because it creates a nursery on open water. But it's when it's stuck here that's when it gets the most effect. So if this company can profit off by taking it off the open water and not taking it out of the bay, then you still haven't solved anything.
Maybe they should put their boat right in front of the bay so they can catch it right before it goes into the bay.
Yeah, something like that would be possible. Yeah. But yeah, I'm pretty sure these are things that they're thinking about. I think they would rather collect it from a bay like this, a boca like this, instead of having to go on the rough seas with such a vessel.
Yes, and
I think that's the biggest problem for Damen now, is to be able to use that, because that boat is mostly flat, and then the waves are they have very short intervals between each other and they're very high. So I feel like that would be very practical for them.
Yes,
and very expensive.
Yeah, you have so much sargassum in this bay that actually collecting it is really easy and getting large yields of it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe they need fresh sargassum for what they're doing.
Yep,
I don't know.
that's also the problem, which is where the protocol comes in for the government or whatever entity would come into play, that they need to be able to start early to collect it as it's coming in fresh, not letting it start decomposing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, also because if you collect it before it reaches the coast, you also save all the seagrass and corals that are affected by the sargassum.
Yeah, and the mangroves.
Yeah. Yep. Which is the issue on the north coast because of the rough seas. It's kind of hard to do that.
Yeah.
But there are many concepts I know that have been brought forward, and of course concepts are concepts until proven into fact. So then we're still not there yet, but people are working on it, and I think it's very positive that there's a lot of local people trying to find solutions as well, because that's how I think it's great. At the end of the day, it's the local people that have to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, and I also hope that local people can profit from this new resource, because in the end it's a nuisance, but if you know how to use it, then it can become a resource.
Yeah, kind of like the business model in Barbados.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, sargassum could potentially be used to collect saccharide as well. So then if you have a chemical plant that can process sargassum with that, it's very good for the chemical industry.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Do we have any more questions for our friend here today?
No?
Javier, thanks for hanging out with us.
No problem. It's a lot of fun.
And all, and thanks for seeing the big picture and all this. That's I especially appreciate that. And all, and so yeah, thanks for being with us today. Thanks for teaching us a couple of things and showing us your stuff. So yeah, with that, just have you a good day, and
Thank you.
And all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Have a good day, and for those in Europe, have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
That was pretty nifty.
Yes, this was awesome. It was really interesting.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that sargassum was such an issue in Curacao. I thought they only got like minimal impact there, but it seems like it's really a big thing.
Yes, and it's interesting. He said they're removing it because the areas that are impacted are important for tourism. But unlike other islands, it's not bays where there's a hotel right next to it. It's bays where tourists go to see the beauty of Curacao. And I think that is unique from what I've seen so far, that they do remove it from beaches that are important for tourism, just for sightseeing and for seeing the island and experiencing the island.
Yeah, which makes it maybe partly a little bit more difficult because no hotel or no big business feels responsible for it, right? And that's why volunteering needs to come into the role of removing it. And then if it gets too much, the government, of course. But yeah, it's interesting also how it's really different depending on where you are in Curacao. Some areas are super affected, like the bay he was showing us, and others is just a bit that it's easily removed. So it's really also about the geography and the topography that makes things different.
Well, it always is geography, isn't it?
It is. Did you enjoy the 4 languages he speaks and know his background with the local communities?
Well, I talked to him earlier this week about joining our project, and also I knew all that stuff, and I was excited when I talked to him. I'm like, this guy understands exactly what we're doing over here at Marine Conservation Without Borders. And I was just tickled to meet him, when Francisco sent that email out to us, like, he's got this and this and this. I think you don't like this guy. So I just sent him an email, let's talk. And so we had a really nice, we talked for about an hour on WhatsApp this week. And I'm like, wow, he's going to do some stuff. His way of seeing the world, he can change things. And I was just really happy to talk with him earlier this week and tickled to have him on here today.
Yeah, he definitely understands the importance of communicating with the locals in their language and not trying to, make the guidelines in English that no one really cares about, but to really get to the people.
Yeah.
Yes, and also knowing how to talk to the fishermen and other locals, like not just language-wise, but how do you approach somebody? All those manners and things that a lot of scientists or foreigners coming in are lacking, because we haven't lived in that community. We haven't interacted with these people before.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in today and learning with us from our guest about sargassum.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please consider supporting us financially by becoming a Patreon. For as little as $1 per month, you can support us and take part in an exclusive monthly Zoom happy hour for Patreons, where you can network with our podcast guests and other sargassum enthusiasts.
This podcast was produced by Marcel van der Kamp, and your hosts today were Robbie Tingham, Francisca Elmer, and Mar Fernandez. We will be back next week with another exciting guest.
Do you want to find out more about what our guest talked about today? Check our show notes for links to the documents and websites. The music in this podcast is from the song Demo Pray by Drizzle Roadrunner, an artist from Roatan. You can listen to the full song at the end of this episode. If you enjoy his music, then please follow him on Spotify and YouTube, where you can find more of his music. But for now, here is Demo Pray by Drizzle Roadrunner.
Hey, brother, hear me now. Brother, dog. Now me understand. Now for them no want to see we get nothing. That's why them a pray and always front and star. Now for them no want to see we get nothing. That's why them a pray. Now for them a pray. Them a pray. Them a pray. Me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray. Me no reap success. Now for them a pray. Them a pray. Them a pray. Me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray. Me no reap success. So me tell them yeah, profit is my money. No take that. Only if it come from Jah, I'll accept that. Now for them me put me trust in and give me setback. Yo, select that. Will and pull up that. Tell some wicked that bad mind me no fear them. Anytime them cheat and chat, me no hear them. Me dash a few hard soak for the queer them. Me dash a few hard soak, tell them where them. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no reap success. So me tell them yeah. Yes, me know me have a lot of fake friends, but me never woulda thought me woulda have fake family. So me tell them straight, me no trust them. Me no trust you and me no trust him. Fake friend lost bad mind in a real life. Star me no rate that, star me no rate that. But me real family woulda bust a million shot in a real life. Real now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no reap success. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no reap success. So me tell them yeah. Oh, them a pray, me no reap success. Screaming out loud. Me woulda tell them fi go look alike, but them a hate and grudge and creep on mine. Them a move like Judas. Them a move like Judas. Plus, everybody have a life to live. So when they give one rascal who a try judge me, let them chit chat so what them want to say. Cause none of them out there nah feed. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no reap success. Now for them a pray. Them a pray, me no gain progress. Now for them a pray.